Okay. Hello, Michael. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm okay. Would you like something to drink?
No, thank you.
Okay. So, what are you up to these days?
Um, just been thinking about some things in my life, had some experiences.
Like, what kind of experiences?
Well, just been struggling with some things, around racism, and I think it's partially because of, some of the things that I've gone through in my childhood. So, yeah, I would like to tell you about some of those things. I think there's like two situations that really affected me in my childhood that, you know, have gone into my now adulthood. And the first situation is when I was in elementary school. Um, I was part of a pretty good school system, but the elementary school that I was in was struggling a little bit academically. Um, and it was mostly, because of the minorities in the school. Um, but at the time, the principal one day pulled all of the African American and Hispanic children out of the classes into a room and basically just chastised us about our grades, told us how terrible we were performing, and how Hispanics and blacks have always been low performing, how they're affecting the school, and it really had an effect on me because I didn't think that was right. I felt like it was a form of discrimination, and obviously that could have been done a lot differently. I didn't feel like I was being empowered as a student. I felt like I was being brought down. Um, and it was every African American and every Hispanic in the school. So you could have been an African American performing well in the school, but you were in that meeting because you were African American or Hispanic.
Did you perform well on that exam, those exams?
Yeah, I've always performed well in school.
And you were still in there, in that group, you were still included, even though you had good grades, let's say.
Yes.
So you're sure that it was a racist
Yes.
situation?
Yeah, so that was the first experience, and thankfully, my mom was a single mother and worked 12 to 16 hours a day as a nurse, and she was very involved in the school system and met with some of the other parents of the students and met with the board of the school system, and eventually that principal was removed from the school. But yeah, it still had an effect on me.
But that experience still in your mind still bothers you?
Yeah, and to me it just, confirms that there is racism, because many people don't believe that it really exists. There's another experience. I was in, part of an organization growing up, and I was playing with some kids, and a Caucasian kid at the time got mad at me for something and called me the N-word. And it was the very first time that I have been called that. I've heard of it before, through different historical literature and things of that nature, but had never been called the N-word. And this was probably in the 90s.
And you were about how old?
I was probably about maybe 11 years old, and the thing is, many people think that, during that time that racism, again, just did not exist. So I've gone through several different experiences like that, and I've tried not to let them affect me as a person or define who I am, but in all reality, when things like that continuously happen to you, it's a confirmation that racism and prejudice actually does exist. And I think it affects you as a person, the way you see yourself. I think it affects your self-esteem. because, you know, if you take, for instance, a Caucasian kid in the school system, you know, they're being told over and over that they can do it, you know, they can succeed, they're the smartest ones in the school, and they, you know, there may be a Caucasian kid in the school system that has terrible grades, but if they're being told over and over that they're in a form superior, then they may actually start believing it. And I believe as an African American, when you're being told over and over that you're low performing, that you're beneath, that you will never make it to the top, that you will never succeed, that you actually, you know, start believing that. And, you know, that really upsets me. Just the way that the system functions, you know, it upsets me as a person, and, you know, it upsets me for the other people out there, other African Americans that want to get ahead, and they're just being told over and over that they're not going to make it. But just going forward, one thing I've seen just in the workplace is I've seen discrimination and racism in the workplace. You know, I have multiple degrees. I have an undergraduate degree, I have a graduate degree. You know, I've worked very hard in the industry that I'm in, gotten some really good experience. But one thing my dad always told me is that as an African American male, I have to work twice as hard to get to where the quote unquote white man is. And I believe part of what he stated was true. I do feel like I've had to work a little bit harder to get to where I am because I'm an African American. And I mean, one thing I've seen in my workplace is, you know, for instance, there's only one African American person in my workplace.
Out of how many? More or less?
Out of about 200 people.
Out of so that's what, not even 1%?
Right.
Barely, right?
Yes, and there are barely any females. Most of the people within my organization are white males. And I mean, you look around and, you know, you have to decipher why that is. Why is it that 99% of the population are white males? You know, were there not any African Americans or women that applied for jobs at that company?
I'm sure there were.
I'm pretty sure that there were, you know, well-bodied, capable, educated, experienced, and qualified minorities and women that applied for jobs at that company, but have not received jobs. And I believe what we're experiencing in the 21st century in regards to racism is not blatant, upfront, in-your-face racism. There's there's not many people in your face calling you the N-word. There's not many people telling you blatant to your face that you can't make it because you're African American. But there are companies out there that are not hiring minorities. There are companies out there not hiring women. And there are African Americans and minorities not receiving promotions because they are African American.
Not because of their qualifications, not because of their race or their
For instance, there's the one other African American gentleman in my company has over 20 years of experience in his field. Many more years of experience than some of the managers in the company, has education and is good at what he does and is at a very low position compared to other people in the company with similar experience and similar education. So, and then you just felt an underlying tone of kind of like a sense of entitlement from the superior race standpoint. Like, because I'm African American and I have a decent paying job, I must be a charity case because there's no way that I could have the education, knowledge, or experience to get that job. It must be a charity case.
By charity, you mean that they hire you because they pity you?
Well, that's what happens is there are laws, out there that are, basically require companies not to discriminate against minorities. And, these organizations that create these laws, they want to see a certain number of minorities. And if you are a large company with hundreds of employees, and all of your employees are white males or Caucasian, and you employ within a city that is 53% African American, and you have no minorities, that is a problem. So I think what happens is a lot of these companies, they start interviewing more minorities and more African Americans reluctantly to raise their numbers. And I believe the African Americans that are being hired at these companies are qualified. They have degrees, they have the knowledge, they have experience. But when these all white male companies or all like 98% white companies hire African Americans, the other employees think it's a charity case.
Oh, okay. And how does that make you feel? Like all these experiences, how do you make you feel like your self-esteem or your self-concept?
Well, it upsets me sometimes, it angers me because I feel like I have to fight for everything that I have. Nothing is handed to me. Nothing is easy. And I feel like what my dad says, I have to fight twice as hard for what I get compared to the other race.
So that's it's a hard situation.
Yeah, and it's the story of my life, and it's just a continuation, throughout our culture. It seems like a cycle. You see, African Americans in terrible school systems that are not being supported and can't, make it into college and then can't get good jobs, and it's just really, really discouraging.
They don't get the education they deserve, right? So they don't make it to college.
Yeah, and then they're blamed. They're blamed for it because they are not receiving the education that they need. They're blamed because they're at poverty level.
But it's not their fault.
Yeah, if you never
It's the
receive
system's fault.
the education that you need to get out of poverty, how can that be blamed on them?
It's very unfair. And racism, or it's irrational, like there's no justification, there's no explanation for it other than pride and a feeling of superiority, and people sometimes don't realize how much damage we cause, right? So we've done it sometimes too.
Yeah.
Not knowing it, maybe, or not intentionally. But thank you, Michael, for coming today and sharing your concerns